minor annotations, where next week we're going to look at secularism in the scales of Islam. Because of the time factor, I didn't know that Maghrib is very soon. I'd like to go straight into the topic, though there are a few things I would like to speak about and get off my chest. Secular, or secularism, or secularize, means, according to the dictionary, to exclude religion from public life. That is, you have religion, and traditionally, religion was part of public life. The laws, the etiquettes, the morals that govern the streets, that govern people's interactions. It governs business, how we conduct or don't conduct business. The laws in general of a state, of a country. However, secularism proposes that laws not be based upon religion or a belief, but rather the laws that are material, that are based upon the opposite of spiritual. That is, laws that are not linked to a particular religion or religious belief or ideology, that are largely the development of the rational thinking of men. Secularism. So, for example, what I'm going to talk about is history and its origins, which are very, very important to understand. So, for example, you have a country, a Muslim country. To secularize that country means that you no longer have the Quran and the Sunnah as the legal system. So, for example, in a Muslim country, you have the Quran and the Sunnah. All the laws are based upon the Quran and the Sunnah. To secularize it means to expunge those laws, take those laws out. No more laws from the Quran and the Sunnah, but laws based upon rationality. Often, though, the case is not that, yarhamakallah, that the laws are actually based upon rationality. Rather, the laws are based upon Western laws. And this is something which is interesting. So many times you find people say, okay, we want to have secularization in a particular country, and the laws no longer religious laws. But when you look at those laws, they're actually laws that come from the West. And many laws in the West are influenced by the Bible. For example, thou shalt not kill, 10 Commandments. So this is the essence of secularism. Secularism, the understanding and the ideas of secularism, separating religion from our public life, the lives that we live on the streets, on the roads, in the schools, in the courts, can be traced back to early Greek philosophers, and at a later date, philosophers coming out of what is known as the Enlightenment, which we'll talk about in a minute. The history of secularism has to be understood in respect to the history of the West. Secularism as a movement is a Western movement in specific. As we know from our history, that in the medieval times and before, the church was dominating and all-powerful. For example, when Galileo Galilei proposed that the earth went round the sun, he was told to repent. This was considered to be heresy, bid'ah. And the Catholic Church at that time, bid'ah, if you didn't repent, resulted in your death. Okay, so he repented. Or should I say, was forced to repent, had no choice if he wanted to maintain his life. So the church had power. And the Pope, because at that time, if we look at the Middle Ages from the 10th century down, the dominating church at that time was a Catholic church in most of Europe, if not all of Europe. And the Pope wasn't a spiritual leader, somebody who tells you what is morally right or morally wrong, and you can listen to him or ignore him. No. The Pope was a power in and of himself. And the Pope gave fatwa. You know fatwa? They call them papal bulls. So, the order for the Crusades, that is, the going into the lands of the Muslims in Palestine and to quote unquote conquer them in the name of Christianity came from a fatwa from the Pope. The Pope is the one who encouraged people to go to fight in the name of Christianity. Kings of Europe, queens of Europe, princes of Europe were scared of the Pope. And to go against what the Pope said was like going against God. Why? Because in the Catholic Church, the Pope is God's representative on earth. Who knew that? Who didn't know that? Raise your hand. Who didn't know that? The Pope is God's representative on earth. He represents God on earth. The Pope. Not today. His power is significantly diminished. Where today the Pope is a spiritual ruler. But before he had power. And he had power to motivate other kings to fight on his behalf. Or all of the kings, as we see with the Crusades, to fight on his behalf. The Pope said go to fight. What did they do? They went to fight. Though they claimed it was for Christianity, it was actually for something else. But that's besides the point. And so what people found was that many aspects of life was controlled and dominated by the church, by religion. Sometimes, as we gave the example of Galileo Galilei, it was repressive. It was against development and innovation and science, which is the total opposite to Islam. In Islam, if two people, for example, one person believes that the earth goes around the sun, and somebody believes the sun goes around the earth, the opposite, do we execute that person? Do we imprison one of them? No. These are just opinions, worldly opinions that can be accepted or rejected. But the total opposite in the 10th century and 11th century. At this time, what you're starting to find is a break from tradition. You're starting to find movements that are cultural, that are political, and they are philosophical. I want to highlight three movements because of the time, three important movements.
You can continue after Martin.
Okay. Three important movements. The first movement is the first Renaissance of the 12th century. The Renaissance is a time where people, of the 12th century, where people rediscovered the works of the ancient Greeks, which had disappeared from memory. Many of these works of the ancient Greeks in philosophy and other sciences were in Arabic. The Arabs, for centuries, had translated them from Greek into Arabic. In the 12th century Renaissance, they either read them in Arabic or got them translated from Arabic into English or their respective language, usually Latin. At this time, you find people reading the classical works, starting to develop knowledge and understandings which are different from tradition. Science, or a notion of science, is slowly developing. The idea of materialism, walaikum salam, is slowly developing. Materialism, remember we said before, is not a belief in things which are spiritual, but things just on this planet, on this earth, that you can see, that you can touch, that you can smell, you can feel. Materialism slowly starts to develop as an idea, moving away from spiritualism. This, of course, is a challenge to the Holy Roman Empire. It's a challenge to religion. Religion is not just about people, what they do, they don't do, what is halal, that is permissible, or haram. No. Religion controls politics as well. Something religious is seen as something political. And something political is seen as something religious. So, for example, if an organization claims that it is the Muslim organization, if you fight against that organization, you're fighting against what? Islam. Isn't it? As the Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan al-Muslimin. They refer to their leader Hassan al-Banna as Imam. Imam is a leader, spiritual leader, and they gave the oath of loyalty to him. Rather than giving the oath of loyalty to the ruler, they gave it to him. And when anybody challenges the Ikhwan Muslimin, it is as if you are challenging Islam. Fast forward from the 40s into the 60s with Sayyid Qutb, what did he believe? They believed, and he had something called the 1965 organization, where he and a group of them tried to revive the Ikhwan Muslimin, which had then been dissolved by the government. They believed that the only Muslims on earth were them, and those people with them. They believed that the rest of Egypt, the rest of the Islamic world, had fallen into what they call Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah means a pre-Islamic state. So you may say, for example, something may be from pre-Islam, a particular country or particular region has something from pre-Islam, but the whole ummah, without restriction, fall into pre-Islam? No, that's not permissible, the ulama say. So for Sayyid Qutb, he believed that his country, Egypt, the government and the people are falling into pre-Islam, such that he would not eat the food of the people, and he deemed the food of the people, the meat, to be that of the Jews and Christians. So when you attack that group because of religion, you are attacking Islam. So fast forward, fast backward to this now. In the Renaissance, with the development of ideas and new philosophies, it led to a second Renaissance. The second Renaissance, like the first, was one in which the culture and traditions of change became evident, where people were looking not just to how things were, but how to change society. They were influenced by philosophers who are talking about freedom and liberty. Remember, we spoke about liberty for the last 2 weeks. Not that you are born into servitude to a king or to a ruler, but rather you are born free. And the purpose of life is not to be a good subject. I asked a question, remember I asked a question. Are you citizens or are you subjects? What are we? What are we? Citizens or subjects?
Subject.
On the passport it says the subject, you are a subject of the Queen. Isn't it? Yes? Where the government may refer to you as a citizen of the country. It's almost kind of schizophrenic. It's schizophrenic because in England there is no constitution, unlike America. And probably France as well, where there are republics. There's a written constitution of do's and don'ts, wills and wants, who is responsible, not responsible of the laws. We don't really have a constitution like that. But these ideas are developing, and they come into blossom with the second Renaissance, which is in the 14th to the 17th century, where by this time the ideas of particular philosophers are gripping people. The ideas of liberty, the ideas of freedom, the ideas of breaking with the old for the new. And one of the things that develops and becomes very prominent at this time is science. The idea of something which is a body of knowledge that is objective, out of human experience, or looks at the world not from the eyes of religion, but looks at the world from a methodology which is not particular to any group of people. You find that these ideas taking fruit in what is known as the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment. In the Enlightenment is a time of the French Revolution, where you have all over Europe especially the ideas of philosophers blooming and challenging the established order. Something you have to keep in mind as well. Not only are we talking about just ideas developing, but at this time also the capitalist economy is developing. Remember, in the medieval times you had feudalism. What's feudalism? I spoke about it many times. What's feudalism? Feudalism. Nobody? Where you have the king and the aristocracy and everybody else is poor. Most people are like serfs or slaves, living on land, owned by somebody. Could be a king, could be a queen, could be an aristocrat. And every year you are to give some of your produce to the king or the aristocrat, and money as well. This is the old order. What you are starting to see, capitalism develop, where you become rich not based upon your birth. Under feudalism, it depends where you are born. If you're born into the royal family, you're rich. And if you're not, you're poor. Nobody cares. Where capitalism is not about where you were born and how you were born. Capitalism is about how you can use your ideas to make money. How you can make things that are in demand and sell them. And so capitalism is starting to develop at this time. Capitalism also is developing because of technology. Technology is a wheel of capitalism. For example, the car. The first cars that came out were constructed by hand. Somebody made the parts, put the parts together. Along comes Henry Ford, mechanizes the whole process. So a machine builds it. And it's able to build it in large numbers to bring the cost down. Yeah? And so capitalism is developing at this time, becoming widespread. And the capitalists are taking over in terms of ruling. Where you had the monarchy ruling, now you're having the capitalists, those people with money, with business, with industry, they're the ones ruling. And they're slowly finding that they are limited because of the rulers, the kings. The kings want more money, they always want money. That's why Charles I was killed. And many of the kings always had a tussle. The kings of England always have problems with Parliament. As Parliament develops, development of Parliament develops capitalism. As Parliament develops, the king wants more money. Parliament doesn't want to give its money to the king, and so there's a fight over power. So what you have in the time of the Enlightenment is development of ideas of freedom, liberty, and another dangerous idea called democracy. Which we have we looked at democracy. We looked at democracy, didn't we? Did we look at democracy, Chef? Did we look at democracy? Everyone's like looking at me. Did we?
No.
No, not yet. Okay. Oh, also ideas of democracy. That is the idea of the rule of the people. Not one person ruling over everybody else, but the rule of the people. The ability of the people to determine the laws and the development of the country. You have the idea of democracy. It's hard to have a king or one ruler who says, well, we do this, we don't do this, we go here, we don't go there. Yes? So these ideas are developing in the time of the Enlightenment, which is around the 16th and the 17th century. And also you're finding not only just ideas of freedom, liberty and democracy, also the scientific revolution, where people are moving away from looking at religion and people are looking at science. They see science, especially the elite. And this is something I want to send as a take-home message. Elites, those people at the top, you usually find elites in their society to be detached from their society. Wherever you look in the world, they are the people who see themselves at the figurehead, the most important people. They see themselves as the people with the most important ideas. And they see themselves as breaking away from tradition. You see in the Muslim world. So if you look at the elites, those with money, those with wealth, with status, those with high qualifications, they're not like everybody else. They don't see themselves like everybody else. Usually they see themselves as trend setters. And so the elite, so I'm not talking about the people on the ground, the average Joe and Martha. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the educated classes who could read. Because there's something we seem to forget. Not everybody could read in the 14th, 15th, 16th century. Even today, in many countries of the world, literacy, that is people being able to read, not everybody can read. And you'll be surprised. So we have the elites developing these ideas of science and the importance of moving away from religion and materialism, things that we can see, we can touch. And with this movement towards materialism and things that we can see, that we can touch, also comes the ideas that we need to remove religion from our lives. We need to move religion away from our lives. And the whole notion of secularization. So what you're finding is, with the development of ideas like democracy, that is people ruling themselves, you have the idea also of secularism, the separation of church from the laws and the rules of the country. And this is very important as well. Why is it important? Because with religion comes morality, isn't it? With religion comes morality. So for example, if you have religion, can you eat pork? No. In Islam, no. Can you sell pork? No. What about khamr, alcohol and intoxicants? Can you sell them? Can I in a Muslim country open up a hashish farm and start selling hashish to people? Nah. Yes? Not legally anyhow. When you talk about democracy, people and liberty, so people are free to do whatever they like, as long as they don't harm people. When you talk about democracy, then people themselves ruling themselves, not God, not religion, then you break down the barriers of halal haram. You break down any morality that controls people's lives. One of the appeals of secularization, especially in the West, was to release people from the power of the church. The church dominated people's lives. If you take religion to be a personal thing, it's about you. In your house you can live out as you want to, but out on the streets, no. It's secular laws. Then the power of the church is weakened, isn't it? It is weakened. And this is the pull for secularization. When you have modern republics, we have two modern republics. And what are the two main modern republics? Anybody tell me? What are the two main modern republics in the West? France. Excellent. And? No? America. We spoke about France, and you cannot underestimate the ideological power of the French Revolution. The French Revolution was feared by the royalty. Remember, we're talking in the 1700s, at a time where most countries were ruled by kings or queens, or they had significant power. The French Revolution, it sent waves around Europe. Why? Because if the French can do it, so can we do it. Yes? The French Revolution showed that the average person can take control of their life, or try to take control of their life. The French Revolution, part of its ideas of freedom, liberty, fraternity, brotherhood, was also secularism. Secularism to diminish, to weaken the hold of the church over the society. The church was considered to be corrupt, and the rules of the church, the spiritualism of the church seemed to be corrupt, and they have been corrupted. So with secularism, you say, no longer are the laws of our society dominated by religion, but they are by people, parliaments, governments, lawmakers who sit down using their rationality, using their minds, their intellect to make laws. Not referring back to the Quran or the Sunnah or to the Bible or the Talmud, no. They are rational laws, yes? You see with the blossoming of the French Revolution and as well the American Revolution. The American Revolution is important for us because it is an Anglo-Saxon revolution. The people who are the founding fathers of the American Revolution are people Anglo-Saxons. Most of their ancestors came from the United Kingdom. Many of the people who had the ideas of republicanism and libertarianism are people who are from Britain. Taking the ideas from Britain and the philosophies from other people from France, other philosophers from Germany, taking on board those ideas. So what you have with the American Revolution is the separation of church from state. That is, the laws of the country are based upon rationality and intellect. Religion plays no part in the laws of the country. And what's important as well is many of the founding forefathers of the American Revolution were people who are called deists. That is, they believe God made the world, God made the creation, and took a step back, just left it to go as it is. This is a very, very important belief, because many people who are atheists today are trying to promote the idea amongst people like Muslims. That is, Okay, who created you? Okay, you don't believe in evolution? No problem. It's God who created you. Who created everything in existence? Okay, you believe God? That's cool. But God doesn't want us to use laws from any scripture in making laws. Doesn't want us to use scripture to make laws. Doesn't want us to control our governmental laws by scripture. No. God took a step back and He's given us the capacity, because we have brains, we have intellect, to do things that we need to do. God wants us to use that in making a future for ourselves. This is some of the rhetoric that they use. And so what you have with the two republics, especially, the process of secularization, that is, to make the laws of the country separate from religion. Religion doesn't influence or impact upon the laws. Now, secularization is not just in terms of laws. Secularization is bigger than just laws. And I use laws because these are big ideas and I'm trying to bring them down. Secularization includes every aspect of human life. So for example, when you talk about secularization of institutions, we have a number of institutions in society. For example, what is known as the executive, which is the legal part, the government. Secularization of the government means that none of the decisions of the government is based upon religion. And anything linked to the government should not be based upon religion. So that includes what? Tell me. What does that include? What institutions does the British government, what is it responsible for? Think.
Education.
Excellent. So first thing is schools. So when we talk about secularization in this respect, it means there's no religion in schools. Now in places like America, this is a big debate. It's a big debate. On the one hand, you have the fundamentalists, I hate to use that word, but the people of religion, who want to bring prayer into schools. But then you have the federal state, the government saying, well, hey, if the school is run by the government and paid by the government is a secular entity. It's got nothing to do with religion, so you can't have prayer in school. Okay, you can't have prayer in schools. Also, we have other institutions, for example, like the army and the police. Now, in those countries like the Western countries, secularism, we can see it making sense. Because, why concern? Because historically, there's been a long history of intolerance. So people, Protestants were persecuted, then people were Catholics were persecuted. You had in the 1600s, the Trinity laws. Trinity laws prohibited Muslim and Muslim worship in the United Kingdom. Have you heard of Trinity laws before? No. You haven't, have you? Trinity laws that prohibited the practice of the Mohammedan, they called it, Mohammedan religion. Also countries, for example, like India, it makes sense. So in India, if you don't have secularism, what do you have? You have Hindu laws, isn't it? So the laws of the country, of the courts, of marriage, divorce, of births, everything is going to be based upon what? The Bhagavad Gita, based upon Hinduism, yes? This is reality on the ground. This is reality. So many countries to avoid that, so you have countries in Africa. Africa is a continent, it's not a country. Am I right? Yeah. The countries of Africa are artificial. Why do I say they're artificial? Why are they artificial? Why is Sudan artificial? Tanzania artificial? Why are all these countries artificial? You get caught? Huh? Excellent. The borders of Tanzania from Kenya, how long have there been borders between those two countries? 60 years before that were there borders? No. People from the Arabian Peninsula would travel to Ethiopia all the way down and around and come back. There were no borders. Why do you have a tribe called the Rashida who are from the Arabian Peninsula? They're today. If you go to Saudi Arabia, you find the Rashida. Why are they in Sudan? They just go on their camels and they just came. You find, historically, I'm using the example of Africa, tribes who hate each other for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. As you see in southern Sudan with the Dinka and the other tribes who have until recently been fighting each other, they're mortal enemies. They're mortal enemies. They've hated each other not for 1 year or 2 years, Thousands of years. So all of a sudden you make a country called Sudan or Southern Sudan or Tanzania and you put everybody together. What's going to happen? Without the traditions of democracy, you give people democracy, how do we vote in our countries? According to what? How do we vote? If you are in Tanzania and the man who's running for president is originally from Zanzibar and the other guy's from another tribe or another place, who are you going to vote for? Zanzibar, isn't it? That goes without saying. That's the whole of Africa is like that, except for maybe parts of the north. So, it makes sense to talk about secularism in those circumstances. If you have different groups, different tribes, different religions having to live together. And somebody may say it's also lazy. Because you can make a political system where everybody can be pluralistic. You have your traditions and your stuff. We have our traditions, our stuff. It's difficult, but it can be done. However, it becomes a totally different ballgame when we talk about Muslim countries. And after Salatul Maghrib, I'm going to talk a bit about the Muslim countries before I end. The secularization then is not just the laws, but it means the institutions as well. It also means relationships. It means relationships. If, for example, we secularize relationships, what does that mean? Relationships. If relationships are secularized, what does that mean?
Marriage.
Is marriage binding on people? No. Marriage, as we know it, comes from religion. Marriage, as we know it, comes from Christianity in the West. Marriage, as we know it, comes from Islam or another religious tradition in the East. If you secularize it, hey, the laws of marriage, not based upon any religion, any deen, Sibu, take it away. It's based upon its rationality. So marriage is between two consenting adults. And we say, okay, logically, what age should we put? Because it's arbitrary. Think about it. You can get married when you're 16 with your parents and 18 by yourself. But 15, 14, 13, you can have a boyfriend. And 13-year-olds run away with their boyfriends, don't they? What can you do if your 13-year-old runs away with her boyfriend? What can you do? Absolutely nothing. There's nothing you could do about it. Even I saw in France, the government has refused to make an age of consent. Am I right, brother?
Consent of what?
An age of consent, that a person can consent to having relationships. I'm trying to be very diplomatic here. There isn't that one in France. There isn't one.
There is one.
What's the age of that?
It's about 13.
That's a joke, isn't it? Age of 13 is an age of consent, yes? But here comes my point. If relationships are secularized and the laws are based upon rationality, we're going to base it upon how we see things. So first of all, marriage goes out the window because marriage, according to Islam and Christianity, is based on a man and a woman, both of them consenting to come together under a contract. Secularization means that's out the window. You just have two consenting, a man and a woman. That's why in England we have something called a common law marriage. Have you heard of that before? That is two adults, male and female, they live together as partners. You know, in this country, people live together 15, 20 years and never have problems. As soon as they get married, that's when the problems start. When you ask people about marriage, they say, you know, at work, well, what's marriage? Oh, it's only a bit of paper. This is how people see marriage. It doesn't have that significance. Those with a traditional culture or religion, their marriage is very important, especially having the ceremony. People tend to focus more on the ceremony. So you have, don't tell the bride and bridezilla. What's it focus on? The ceremony, not the actual marriage itself and what people should know when they get into a marriage. So then you can take it a step further. If you secularize relationships, so two consenting adults, whatever an adult is not what the deen says in our religion. An adult is usually somebody in the age of who has particular signs of puberty, particular signs of puberty. That goes out the window. What becomes the age of consent is what is legally seen. And it's up to the lawmakers. They can say it's 13, 14, 10, 11, 12, etc. Whereas puberty, when somebody becomes pubescent in Islam, they can get married. Same with the Native Americans, same with Judaism as well. When you're pubescent, whatever age you are pubescent, you can get married. Also, you can say, okay, if you have two consenting adults, then you can say, well, hey, it doesn't have to be a man and a woman. It could be a man and a man, woman and a woman. How can you then say no? How can you even criticize it? There's no criticism. Why? Because the criticism against that relationship comes from religion. If you say, well, hey, religion's taken out of it, there's no religion, then you can't criticize it. This is the ramifications of secularization. Also, when you secularize, in business transactions, so in the Bible, the Old Testament, and in the Quran, is interest permissible or not permissible? It's not permissible. When you secularize business transactions, what happens? Can you have riba? You can have riba. It becomes a legitimate business transaction. So this is the ramifications of secularization. So for example, where you may have a country, the general, the top of the army, you may say, okay, has to be Muslim. It's like Iran, okay, it has to be Shia Muslim. Or it's Egypt, has to be Sunni Muslim. Under secularization, could be anybody. Anybody within reason could become the head, the general of the army, the head of the army. So these are some of the ramifications of secularization. What time is Maghrib? Okay, cool. As an idea, secularization, what we're seeing is the linking of secularization with modernization. To be modern, you have to be secularized. But is that true though? No. It is not necessary for you to secularize to be modern. To say, okay, all the laws of the country and all the state itself has to be divorced from religion. Because we saw in the 7th century modernization with Andalus, medieval Islamic Spain, that was highly religious. We have many examples of highly religious societies that at its time were extremely modern. So you don't have to be modern to be necessarily secular. You can be religious or any kind of a belief or ideology. But this is what's happening. So what you're finding now, for example, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the number of people who would identify themselves as Christian was around 50 to 55%. 50 to 55%. Today, that number is down to 40 to 45%. People are considering themselves to be, at best, agnostic. Agnostic means you don't say God exists, nor do you say God doesn't exist. Also, you're having people following other types of religion. Now, one of the funny things of the last census, there was a push for people to say they're not Christian, but they are Jedi. You know Jedi of Star Wars? The Jedi of Star Wars. You had a large number of people on the form ticking the box for Jedi, or other writing Jedi, yes? Now, in preparing today's lecture, I did lots of reading for today's lecture, and what was amazing, I sat back and I started thinking about this. Look at this. Where you're having a move towards secularization, now people believe the less religious people are, or less affiliation to a religion they are secular, which is not necessarily the case. You have people calling themselves Jedi. Who benefits from me calling myself, my religion is Jedi? Who benefits from that?
Oh, the Star Wars franchise.
Excellent! It's not that you follow a religion that is spiritual, has nothing to do with this world. You're following a religion that benefits the Star Wars franchise. The word Jedi, is it a trademark or not a trademark? It's a trademark. If I went out and put my shop, Jedi Burgers, what would happen to me? Lucasfilms will send me a cease and desist order, which means take it down or else we'll take you to court. Yes? So it's not that as if you are not benefiting somebody. Somebody's benefiting from that. It's every time you say the word Jedi, it's publicizing Lucasfilms. But what's happening now, you're finding across communities, is some people what they call non-verts. That is, that people no longer have this strong affiliation to their religion, whether it be Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, or Sikhism, or any other type of religion. People are kind of loosening the strings between them and religion. It doesn't necessarily mean that those people are going to be atheists. They at best are agnostic, but they themselves don't have an affiliation to religion. Now this also brings into the idea of a spiritual crisis. We're finding a lot of young people who are, they're born in a particular religion. When they get to a particular age, they find it hard to reconcile the culture and traditions they're brought up with the kind of society they find themselves. Our society is a society which is largely based on hedonism, if it feels good, do it mentality. They find there's a spiritual crisis. Well, I'm not supposed to drink alcohol, all my mates are drinking. I'm not supposed to take drugs, everyone's into weed. I'm not supposed to have premarital relationships, everybody's having premarital relationships. And also this shows you the secularization, very interesting. It's because in many Muslim countries, it's hard for a person under the age of 30 to get married. Very hard. Some countries you have to wait till you're 35, you've got to have a job, enough money for the mahar, enough money for the flat, then you've got to paint the flat, decorate the flat, put all the furniture in, buy gold for her, the women in her family, buy dresses for everybody. You know, by the end of everything, it's 40,000, 50,000 pounds. That's a lot of money, am I right? Or no? It's an awful lot of money. And there are a number of Muslim cultures like that. You can't get married unless you're, you know, you got bullpack money, you just stacking. Now if I, especially living in a sexualized society like this, if I can't get married, what am I going to do? Haram! As a Somali language says, you're going to fall into haram. You're living in England, it is not your conscious, your mind saying to you to do it, it's your subconscious. That's a different discussion for a different time. But your subconscious, which you don't know, is leading you, plotting, and pointing you to directions that you don't even know yourself. Yes? So, with secularization, you're finding in certain regions of the world an increase in people who are agnostic or atheists, like in the West. However, the flip side of the coin, we had something in the 80s that shook everybody. Have you heard of the term balkanization, where people become one unit? With the disintegration of the Soviet Union, respective countries found their religious identity. You had the Bosnian War. And this shocked people to the foundations. Why? Because they assumed that these countries which were communist, atheist, people didn't practice the religion. Countries like the Soviet Union, Russia, the Quran was banned. If you were caught with the Quran, you go to a gulag, to a prison, a re-education camp. They thought religion was dead. But soon as the Soviet Union and the dominating power crumbled, you found the resurgence of religion. And not just there, throughout the whole world. So you have, for example, in the 80s, the Afghan War, in which those people with a vested interest in the war used religion. They used religion. In the Afghan War, religion was encouraged. You have people who will represent the American government going to quote-unquote mujahideen and telling them, God is on your side, you're fighting for God. So you find in the 80s and the 90s, this resurgence of religion around the world. In countries, which we're going to talk about after Salah, which move towards secularization, the re-entrenchment and the comeback of religion. We're going to talk about that inshallah, especially the Muslim world after Salah. And so, what you find with secularization and the loosening of ties of religion, the increase in people who are either agnostic or people who are atheists. However, one thing, and we said this from the beginning, all of us, we have a fitrah, a natural state. And so everybody's trying to find out that thing which is bigger than them. And that's what you're finding now. You're finding a lot of people today are saying, look, I don't practice a religion, but I'm spiritual. I believe there's a God. I think there's something bigger out there. A lot of people who had abandoned religion are slowly coming back to religion. but not maybe Islam, Christianity, Judaism, but slowly finding themselves back because, as we said, from the first lecture we gave in the first of the series, that inside them everybody is the fitrah, the natural inclination towards God. And the fitrah can't be satisfied with sex, drugs and rock and roll. For a while you'll do this, then after a while you start to ask yourself questions. You start to ask yourself why. And you start to realize there is something bigger than yourself, because science, as we've spoken about for weeks, doesn't have the answer to the big questions. Science can't answer the question, why have we been created? It can't. Science can't answer the question, how were we created? These are the big questions. Why we were created and how we were created, science can't answer them. And so while secularists, atheists try to say, well, hey, science is the way, science is limited, because humans are not just about eating, sleeping and drinking. We are about thinking. We're about living. We're about creativity and imagination. We're about connection. All of these, at the bottom of them, is spirituality. Jazakumullah khair. After Salah, inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue talking about some ideas of secularism in the Muslim world. Just so to recap, we said that we are looking at secularism, which is the separation of religion from the state, separation of religion from laws, and separation from religion from the institutions of society. We said that secularism started largely in Europe, developing from the ideas of the first Enlightenment, the 12th century, sorry, the first Renaissance, the second Renaissance, and the Enlightenment, with the development of elites who are taking on new ideas about freedom, liberty, justice, and moving away from the old order. At the same time, capitalism is developing, which breaks away economically from the old order. So what you have is the development of a new society based around ideas such as liberty, freedom, democracy, fraternity. And fraternity is important, especially if we think about it, that we may assume in a society where everybody is homogeneic. So you go to Ghana and everybody looks black, African, am I right? Is everybody the same? No. We have different tribal affiliations, different ethnic group affiliations. Those outside that everybody looks the same, everybody is not the same. This is an assumption people make. So fraternity is important as an idea that brings different groups together. Because like I said, to bring home, Africa is a continent. The lines that make countries in Africa were put there by European powers to divide what's theirs from what is not theirs. So you may have had a group of people, the Hausa Fulani, with another group of people, the Igbo, the Yoruba, who they have nothing in common with. For us, if you look at the Hausa, the Fulani, and the Igbo, the Yoruba, they all look the same to us. Am I right? We can't tell the difference. But they themselves know they are different ethnic groups. So this is the creation of these states. So what you're having now is the development of these elites with these ideas challenging the old power and authority, and you have two types of secularism. Like Brexit, you have hard Brexit, soft Brexit, am I right? So you have hard secularism, which calls for a breaking off, no religion, taking religion totally away. In fact, some countries with their hard secularization, they banned religion, like the Soviet Union and China. They banned religion. You can't practice a religion. And even some countries, to practice a religion, you know, could put you in prison, could put you in a gulag, a concentration camp, like Muslims. I don't know if you saw last month that they had this video out on YouTube where this person had found behind the wall some old Qur'ans that were put there in the 1930s, 1940s. Because they had to, if they caught you with the Qur'an, you were sent to a gulag, concentration camp. And most people died in gulags, they didn't survive. It was harsh concentration camps. So people buried the Qur'an. People weren't allowed to recite the Qur'an in public. They were in trouble in the Soviet Union. So this hard secularism. Well, then you have soft secularism, where the laws, the institutions are secular. However, people are able to maintain their religions. Like in America, like in the UK. The UK, you can practice whatever religion you want. But you don't expect, when you go to a local authority, them to be religious. So I can't go, for example, to the London borough, the borough of Bedford, and say, you know, you people are Christians, you're supposed to ban alcohol. No alcohol licenses, yes? Do you get my point? So he said when secularization takes place, it's not just the laws that govern the roads, the streets, the lampposts, and even all this can be accommodated by religion. But it also means for institutions like the family. So under secularization, there is an age of consent. There is no who can marry who. And there is no control of people's sexual lives. That's the way of putting it, yeah. So for example, in Germany, there are brothels with animals. There are brothels with animals. So you can go to a brothel with an animal and do your thing there. I have to be careful what I say, it's a masjid. Are you with me? Secularization of laws. As long as it's common good, people not hurting other people, people not harming other people, you can do whatever you want to. Yes? So this is some of the ramifications of secularism. Now, I bring our attention to secularism in the Islamic world. And I'm going to talk very general today. I don't want to get myself or yourself in trouble. Yes? As you know, and we'll talk about it in detail, Islam is a religion of deen and dawla. It's a religion of government and a religion of, spiritual system. There is no separation of the two. You can't say, well, secular laws for the state, but everybody runs by Islam. No. And usually what you find in most Muslim countries, historically, that the government sees itself as the executive, that it executes, it puts in order, it operates the laws of Allah. Not that it makes laws, but it ensures that those laws are in operation. However, what you're finding from the 1930s upwards is a movement of secularization. A movement to make in Muslim countries the legal system of the country, the laws of the country, and in the institution of the country, secular. You find this move towards secularization starting especially with nationalist movements. Nationalist movements, most of them started as opposition to colonial governments. So they were ruled by France. The nationalist movement opposes the fact that France controls the country and wants to become independent. The nationalist movement opposes the idea that England controls the country, Britain controls the country, so they want to become independent. The national movement doesn't like the idea that Germans are controlling the country, so they want to become independent. The Germans had very few countries that were under their colonial power. I think Namibia was under the colonial power. They had very few countries. So they want to release themselves from colonial rule. So these movements that start, of course, with the elite, the intellectuals, people who are educated and professional, especially influenced by the West, they use secularization as a means, first of all, to overcome differences. You may have a country, like I've said, where there are different tribes, different people, different religions. So we say, look, forget that you're this religion or that religion, forget that you're from this ethnic group. We are a nationalist struggle. All of us are sons and daughters of this country, and that's the most important thing. So getting different groups to work together, to cooperate together, you find the spreading of nationalism. Also, we find that nationalist struggles are also attractive for groups like socialists, who like the non-religious, non-ethnic nature of nationalist of movements, so they come in and infiltrate them. And you find that socialist and communist movements around Africa and Asia were able to use nationalist movements to spread their ideas and to organize and cooperate together. But what we find, especially in the Arab world, the spread of the notion of Arab nationalism. Now, as you know, in the Muslim world, the Arab world especially, that we learned that Allah said to us, indeed, the best of you is the one with the most piety, God consciousness, fears God the most. And this has always been the general rule, though our Arab brothers have had many lapses when it comes to nationalism. But in general, nationalism wasn't state policy. What you're finding in the Arab world, especially in the 19th century, the beginning of the 19th century, is the development of an ideology of pan-Arabism. That is, whoever, wherever you are, as long as you're an Arab, we are one nation. So, you could be a Jew, Christian, Muslim, Zoroastrian, atheist, whatever, it doesn't matter. That takes second to you being Arab. And Arab nationalists, they think Islam is a great thing, it's from Arab culture. They think the Arabic language is a great language, it is our language. But we meet each other first and foremost based upon our nationality. You have a number of movements starting in the Arab world. First of them, the Ba'ath Party. I don't know what Ba'ath, how do you say? Resurrection, I think you translate it as in English. The Ba'ath Party started by a man by the name of Michel Aflaq, who was a Christian Arab. Very important. Michel Aflaq. Starting the ideas of pan-Arabism. And you have these ideas slowly spreading from the early 1800s, spreading around the Arab world. It was such that when a historian went to Egypt in the 1800s, and this person was of Lebanese descent, was a pan-Arabist, he wasn't religious or anything like that, he was amazed that he found that the Egyptians had no concept of Arab nationalism. The Egyptians had no concept of Arab nationalism. Fast forward now to Jamal Abdel Nasser, what do you see? That in Egypt, the leading ideology is pan-Arabism, the idea of Arab nationalism. And Jamal Abdel Nasser, amongst many people, were one of those people who spread the ideas of pan-Arabism. As you know, in the 40s and 50s of Jamal Abdel Nasser, you had Jamal Abdel Nasser linking with Syria, to Egypt and Syria becoming one country. That was based on pan-Arabism. You have Jamal Abdel Nasser spreading the whole idea of Nasserism, which is Arab nationalism, and an undercurrent of it, socialism. So they went to Yemen, they went to Iraq, different parts of the world, spreading this whole idea of revolution. Revolution based upon Islam? No. Revolution based upon socialist pan-Arabism. And so you find, even today, the remnants of this nationalism. Many Muslim countries, many Muslim people see themselves through the lens of nationalism. In our masjid we have that problem. In our masjid we have that problem. When you try to come together based upon Islam, it's hard. Why? Because I'm from Tanzania, he's from Bangladesh. Nationalism, am I right? We see ourselves through the eyes of nationalism. This has affected the Muslim world. That it's hard to find a Muslim from a Muslim country except for they see everything through nationalism. Is this old or is it new? Think again. It's new. Muslims before this nationalist ideology, what were the Muslims before? They were Muslims. They were one ummah. They're just the Bengalis who are Muslims, or the Tanzanians who are Muslims, the Zanzibari who are Muslims, Nigerians who are Muslims. Muslim was a very important part of their identity. What's the most important part today? Nationality. When someone comes to marry you, if he's from another nationality, what's going to happen? Cross. If he comes from your nationality, he's just Muslim by name, naughty by nature, doesn't pray, doesn't fast. What happens? Marry him, isn't it? Am I talking from my head or is this the reality in front of us? It's the sad reality in front of us. So those people, especially the elites who want to move away from religion, who want to move away from being religious and pious, they found nationalism a very potent, strong way of assuming leadership. So I'm educated, I'm a professional, I'm a leader of the nationalist struggle. Yeah? When we get rid of the English, who comes into power? We do, isn't it? Yes? That's the nationalist struggle for Africa and Asia. Isn't it? Those people who are in power, sometimes till today, if you look at Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe was what? He was a nationalist leader fighting against white supremacy. They got rid of the British. Who took over? He did. They took over. They've been in power till now. Him, the current president of Zimbabwe, were freedom fighters for national struggle. And so this is what you have. You have the moving of one elite, the British, the French, the Germans, the Americans, whoever, with a national elite. The national elite, meaning the elite that comes from that country, it recognizes that if we use religion as the criteria for ruling, they're disqualified because they don't know nothing about the deen. Some of them don't even pray. They drink, they eat pork. They're far away from religion. If you talk about, and I'm not talking about Islam, I'm talking about Christianity. Old Testament shouldn't eat pork. Christians shouldn't eat pork. And so what you find then is the use of secularism as a means, a vehicle of elites maintaining power, keeping power, getting power, and understanding, look, our country, they're all Muslim. If we use religion, I personally don't have any power. I don't qualify. Because personally, I don't practice Islam. So somebody else will qualify. But if we have secularism, well, then I qualify. I'm educated, I speak English, I've been to America for 4 years, got my degree, got my PhD, and I qualify. And this is something we must keep in mind. And some of the elites themselves, because they are committed to agnosticism or atheism, they hate Islam anyhow. They hate Islam anyhow. So they don't want Islam. Why did Michel Aflaq say, rather than pan-Arabism, pan-Islam? Why did he say, what we want is Islam to be the main leading thought, ideology, whatever you want to call it, for all Arabs? He didn't say that. He said, no. Religion secondary, what comes first is your Arab blood. You are more in common with an Arab than a non-Arab. It's what it is, isn't it? If we do about nationalism, a Zanzibari and an Arab, for the pan-Arab, the other Arab is a brother, am I right? The Zanzibari, is he a brother? No, can't be. He's not from the same ethnic group as me. Yes? And so, secularism was used as a vehicle to remove religion. Remove religion. Not just from the laws, not just from the institutions, but the people's minds. Have they been successful? To a degree they've been successful. To a degree they've been successful. Good example. There was something back in the 90s called the Kargil fiasco. Have you heard of the Kargil fiasco? Where the Pakistani army sent into India, or Kashmir, infiltrated Kashmir. They sent some troops there. And there was a fight between them and the Indian troops. What was interesting is people didn't look at it in the sense of, was that right or wrong? Was that legal or illegal? They looked at it from a nationalist perspective. Pakistanis supported the Pakistani government, and Indian Muslims supported the Indian government. Now you would argue, and I would argue, you look at things that are done according to some standard of morality, isn't it? So for example, Patrice Lumumba. Who's heard of Patrice Lumumba here? Lumumba. Who heard of Patrice Lumumba? He was the first and last democratically elected president of the Congo. What happened to Patrice Lumumba? Killed. He's murdered. Not killed. They tortured him. They killed him. They took his teeth out. One general had his tooth. And they boiled him in a vat of acid. They boiled him in a vat of acid. Now, when I look at the murder of Patrice Lumumba, do I say, well, he was a Christian, who cares? Do I say that? Or do I say, he's black, I'm worried? No. You have some kind of morality, isn't it? You have some morality. And you use your morality as a judge. Well, you don't kill people like that for what you killed him for. It's immoral, yeah? But we lose that standard when you are secularized and nationalized. When you're secularized, well, you do what you're doing, I'm doing what I do. Where does that come from? It comes from secularization, isn't it? If my next door neighbours are going crazy, that's their business. It's got nothing to do with me. Am I right? Secularization. As long as I'm not harming other people, not harming me, let them do whatever they want to do. There is no enjoying the good, Amr bil Maruf and Nahi anil Munkar. No, that's out the window. Enjoying the good, forbid the evil, that's out the window. Young guys want to drive around smoking weed and play loud music. Well, they're not harming me, let them do it. No enjoying the good, forbidding the evil. Secularization. And so, the use of nationalism, or secularization should I say, as well, were vehicles to move people away from the deen. To supplant people's minds, the whole idea of a national identity, that takes importance over religion. And I'm not saying Islam has disappeared, no, Islam is here, alhamdulillah. But I'm saying for many of us, especially the community in the UK, this is how we see things. Exactly as I've described them. Exactly as I've described them. Am I wrong? You tell me, brothers, am I wrong? If I'm wrong, say, brother Talib, you're wrong. Am I wrong or right?
You're right.
Right. We don't see ourselves as part of an ummah or a deen. We see ourselves as part of a national identity, a secular national identity sometimes. Not all the Muslim world is secular, no. Some of the Muslim world is not secular at all. Some of it is hard secular, as we see in Turkey. Some of it is soft secular, where there's still religion, and religion is allowed in part of the state or not part of the state in some countries. Countries like, for example, Syria, run by the Ba'ath Party, where you have religion is controlled. So, that brings us to the end of our discussion of secularism. Is there any clarifications or questions? I'm sure I said many things. Hassan, I know you got lots of good questions, mashallah. Give us a good question today. But I want us to go home and think. This idea of secularization has affected us personally. That when it comes to other people outside, do you enjoy the good from the evil? No. Why don't you do that? Why? I'm not saying to go to a Christian and say, why are you drinking alcohol? The Bible says don't drink alcohol. I'm saying ourselves. Why? Why is it Muslims today? Think about it. If I want to become famous, I talk about everything positive. Be positive. 100% you become famous. But if you talk about the real things, what happens? People don't want to hear it. Why is that? Why is it we as an ummah don't want to deal with the reality in front of us? Why? We want happy Islam. Everything is good, nice, but never the bad things. Sir?
Maybe the truth hurts.
Possibly, yeah. Sir?
Yeah, so from what you have described, that means that secularism is a major cause of people becoming materialistic.
I would say, Sheikh, the brother asked a question, from what I've described, secularism is a major cause of people becoming materialists. I would say these are all working together. Materialism is part of capitalism, as I have explained. And secularism is also part of capitalism as well. Why? Because if it's secular, you can sell pork. I remember it was a Muslim country, I don't want to say the name of the country, and I was surprised when we had the swine flu. Remember the swine flu was going around the world? They killed thousands of pigs in that country. And I was like, what? They got pigs in that country? They showed on the news a picture where the pigs, you know where the pigs were kept? You know, like you have an old abandoned building. There's all rubbish in there. That's where they kept the pigs. I'm like, how could you even eat that? It's so disgusting where they're kept. And they slaughtered all the pigs and they gave the pig farmers money for the pigs that they killed. A Muslim country. Arab Muslim country. Yeah? It shows you sometimes that certain aspects of secularism become appealing because it makes money. Isn't it? But you may not call it secularism, you may not say it's secular, but this is what it's tantamount to. Soft secularism. You know, the whole idea, people use the idea, lakum dinukum waliya din. To you, to your religion, me to my religion. Can you say that when someone's drinking? Is drinking a religion? But people use that, don't they? Isn't it, yeah? They use that, am I right? But in Islam, is that true though? You can do what you do, I'm doing what I'm doing. Is that Islamic? That's not Islamic at all. I'm not saying I just grab the wine bottle and smash it out of your hand. No. But we have a din and nasiha to advise the people. Isn't it? If your next door neighbour loves a bacon sandwich every morning, you're not going to say, ha, I'm going to scream at him or her. No. You're going to advise them. But if you're secularized, you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing. There's no way I can condemn you, because what basis do I condemn you? What basis? Yeah, what basis? We spoke about this about morals. Remember we said about morals? Either morals are objective or they're not objective. If there's no objective morals, then anything goes. I can kill you, you can kill me. Who can stop us? If there are morals outside of human beings, then we can say, well, hey, God said don't kill. We shouldn't kill. Am I right? So the secularization, when there's no religion, how can I judge you? You know, we have that saying, the rappers always say, no one can judge me. That's a secular idea. If there's no religion, who can judge me? Huh? Who can judge me? No one can judge me, isn't it? Whatever I do, whether someone sees it as good or bad, it's just your opinion. But no one can judge me. When you bring religion into it, can someone judge me? Of course you can judge me, because you have a scripture that says you can or can't do it. And so secularism, it marries with democracy, it marries with materialism, because it helps facilitate the buying and selling of goods. And I always bring things back down to the general ideas. Does that make sense, Promise, what I'm saying? Yeah? And that's what you find in some countries, some Muslim countries, for example, you will have Islam and the general laws of Islam, but also when it comes to certain things like buying and selling, it's secularized. It's secularized or affected by secularism, you can say. Affected by secularism. And we ask Allah to protect us. Any questions on the questions? Robert? Check? Okay, Jazakallah khair. Next week we're going to look at secularism in the eyesight of Islam, if I can use that expression, or under the Islamic understanding of secularism, which is very interesting. Okay, Jazakallah khair for your patience. We'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.